On today's episode, we'll talk about the job of the emotional stuntman, the West Wing, the Handmaid's Tale, the difference between shooting film and digital, and of course, the single greatest acting note anyone has ever received. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op podcast, where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I am your host, Dave Comides, and we're coming to you today from over the internets, that thing that the kids love. And I'm really, really excited because I have an individual who I've worked with quite a few times over the years. He's a great guy, one of the funniest people I know, and a friend, actor Bradley Whitford, also goes by the name Brad occasionally. Some of Brad's innumerable projects include The Handmaid's Tale, Get Out, Happy-ish, where we work together, Transparent, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, where we work together, The West Wing, where we work together, ER, an episode called Love's Labor Lost, where we didn't work together, but he worked with the amazing Guy B, and it's actually probably one of the best ER episodes ever. Billy Madison, which was the movie that when I found out I was working with Brad, I was like, he was in Billy Madison because it's hysterical. NYPD Blue, Philadelphia. I could not give you the list without saying Guiding Light and All My Children, because that makes me laugh a lot. And of course, everybody knows him from the Betty Ford story. The most... He's also directed both Studio 60 and The Handmaid's Tale. And I will also say this, because I am going to ask you about it, made probably what honestly may be the funniest thing I've ever seen, entitled Bradley Whitford, Emotional Stuntman. And everybody in the world should see it. He's had Emmy nominations for The Handmaid's Tale, for Transparent, and for West Wing, and he's also won for all of those. Golden Globe nominated 3 times for The West Wing, 2 SAG Awards for The West Wing, multiple nominations for The West Wing, Get Out, Handmaid's Tale. He's had 45 nominations in all. And probably more importantly than any of that, he's actually a very politically active and politically savvy individual who sort of puts his money where his mouth is and steps up for projects that are important to him and important to all of us. I could go on and on, but I'm going to shut up for a while and say, Brad, thanks for being here.
Please go on for a while.
I should let everybody know that Brad didn't want to do this, and I said, "You'll get to talk about yourself." And he went, "Wait a minute."
All right. Hang on. I'll go to the opening of a can if I'm in it.
There you go. Thanks for being here. This is great.
It's my pleasure to be with you. You are, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, one of the favorite people I've ever worked with. The Steadicam operator and camera operators in general. It's a very, I think, intimate relationship, and always cared more about your opinion and judgment, which was readily accessible after every fucking take.
I held the signs up that said just thumbs up and thumbs down before anybody knew what it was.
No. What you want to hear for the Steadicam guy when you're like weeping about your dead sister is, yeah, it was good. No, it is. It's a really interesting thing. Mariska Hargitay is a friend of mine, and she was directing an SVU, and I did it last year. Now, here's a show that has been running longer than I've been growing facial hair.
Yep. 26 years, 27 years.
Yeah. It basically started the same year West Wing started, which it would be as if I was wandering around, with a walker and a girdle, sexually harassing Don.
The walk and talks would have gotten a lot easier by now, actually.
They would have got a lot easier.
Stand-in
But
talks.
I was
Yeah.
doing this SVU. Here's a crew. I actually, I worry now because we're even if you're lucky enough to do kind of high-end show, we don't get. Obviously, it was too much doing. It's too many episodes. ER and West Wing, like it's um, overwhelming. The hours were crazy, far more for the crew than for the actors, but there was this unbelievable sense of not only community, but this extraordinary level of skill on these high end shows that was so obvious to me. They were like it would become like an Olympic volleyball team, and I would have these really lucky opportunities to go out and do some snooty films,
Yeah.
and there was never that level of sort of intuitive kind of skill and communication that I felt on the set of ER, that I felt on Studio 60 and West Wing. And now it's really hard to come by because you're doing 10 episodes, at the most, and you're
Gotcha.
doing them like every 3 years. It's really funny. Here, I'm a very lucky actor, but here's my bitching. You work like like you're lucky to be able to do these shows. There's a lead who's very important, and the lead has a million work opportunities. And so you do 10 episodes, and then you wait for them to sort of exhaust their other work opportunities. While you can't pay,
To come back for the next season, you mean, or the
right.
next
You can't pay your
whatever. Yeah.
the crew can't.
Yeah.
The crew has to like unplug the dialysis machine of their aunt while we're waiting for number one to come back. But let me get back. So I did this SVU, and
you were acting in this. I'm assuming you're starring in the episode or something.
Somebody, yeah, I wouldn't call it acting, but I was making faces and yes. I was playing a geriatric role, the first in what I am hoping will be a long line of my diaper era. But it was so. Here's a great crew. They've been working together forever. And his name was John Heron.
John Heron's been there forever.
He's been there forever. And he's a great operator. And what you see, I reached out to him afterwards. I had reached out to Mariska. Just, you could see how valuable this guy was. And it goes to something that the shows at their best, and often it takes a long period to sort of get there, understand that that there is so much, especially from a camera operator, because they are at ground zero. That if they are allowed to contribute, if there is an atmosphere of the best idea wins and no sort of hierarchy, they are so helpful to the actors, so helpful to the directors in terms of blocking. And I really do feel, I think it's actually true was part of the reason I wanted to do the show was as little respect as I have for what I do for a living.
Which is a very little.
It's very little. As one of my children once said, "No offense, Dad, I've seen dogs be good in movies." Which is only devastating because it's true. But all kidding aside, I think that actors have a lot to offer for a similar reason. They are at ground zero. And when they open up their minds to taking more responsibility for the story, They really have a lot to offer, and it's something I've felt, with camera operators. There is, I always trusted the opinion of. I think I would say to you often, is that okay? I felt like with you, there was kind of I could, I would really want to know,
Did that land?
very fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that land?
Yeah.
I always felt like if you fucked up, which was so often, I could ask for another. But if I fucked up, you could ask for another. And
Yeah.
I've had that, if because you're always dealing with this kind of time crunch. And I always felt more connected to the camera operator. Mike Nichols said this really funny thing that I actually got to talk to him about it, because in one of his books, he said directing's weird because it's sort of like sex, because unless you're a really interesting person, you're probably the only one doing, you don't know your particular role in the sexual act, so you don't know how other people do it. And I told him how much I appreciated that quote, because I said, if you're lucky enough to be on a high-end television series, we're getting fucked by a different person every week,
Good.
And I always felt like in those really lucky, sort of rarefied situations where you have a really great crew working together, that I always felt like I trusted the camera operator's opinion,
That's
more than.
amazing. Well, we jumped right in, so I'm going to ask you some specific questions about that. But later on, I do want to ask you about your career before it's over.
Oh, yeah.
We should probably
Yeah,
get to it
we
quickly.
should get to it pretty quick. I have
But
I have a
so
I have a bright future behind me.
so when you jump on a show, or like West Wing, when we started West Wing, or whatever, pick, you don't have to pick me, but pick whatever. What do you see in an operator that makes you go, "Oh, I can trust this person's judgment"?
Mostly, I always feel with camera operators that I can get an unadorned, unpretentious kind of gut check. I mean, directors talking about acting is like dancing about architecture. I mean, it's really pretentious. You can do it all day, but it's often way too confusing.
Mhm.
And at the same time, as an actor, you really don't know. You need an eye out there. And I'm not just saying this because it's, the operator show. A director is usually, I've directed. It's incredibly neurotic. You've got 10 million things going on.
Overwhelming. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
100%.
really overwhelming. And I have a weird, uh, I've probably said this to you at some point, but getting notes is, you've worked with me in many different situations. I don't think I don't want to be a difficult human being on a set.
You're not.
I don't want to be an asshole. If anything, to a fault, I am probably, a little bit of enabler with a, desperate need to make people laugh. But if I'm totally honest, anytime any director has ever said anything to me, I go through 3 silent beats. Fuck you, I suck, okay, what? And
It's
I
good that
can
they're
av
silent.
yes, I can avoid that with the camera people. I can
Really?
I yeah, I can I can just I can very simply, without getting a sort of, like, insecure, like,
Yeah.
desperate director, ornate, and by the way, to my horror, I did the same thing when I was talking
Of
to
course. Yeah.
actors. I found it very, very difficult. And I always find, especially with camera operators, because they're right in there, I can get a truthful read if a moment's
Huh.
working, or, if I can do better.
And when you say you can get that truthful read, I mean, without asking them and saying, "Hey, how was that?" Is it just like body language, and is it looking at them when they come off the eyepiece, or I mean, or do you
Yeah.
just get a feeling? I mean, or can you
Yeah,
explain it? I don't know if you can explain it.
like you do get a feeling. I mean, you get. I mean, I probably pretty quickly am gonna, you know, out of a desperate insecurity, ask people pretty quickly, "Does that suck?" You know,
Yeah, that's
because
your. By the way, you may not know it, but that's that's your sort of go-to. Or did
yeah,
that
yeah,
suck? As
yeah,
Dave
yeah,
calls it.
yeah, yeah. Was that awful? You can definitely tell, and you can. I think I probably unconsciously try to open that up because I think I think it's really helpful, and there's no one more, kind of connected. It also helps, I think, just in terms of efficiency and everything, if we are connected, after a bunch of years of doing this, I can help you guys,
Yeah,
I can help, when I sit, when I stand, I can kind of anticipate. One really interesting thing I thought about with walk and talks is that the worst thing a director could do in a walk and talk is micromanage it. You and I could, like, it's going to take a couple of times, but you will absolutely suck the fucking zen out of us if you start to micromanage. I think if you stop at this corner and hold it for a second and then do that, and then make sure, like, we learned really fast, the guys who were directing a lot of episodes, Missiano and Alex and Tommy.
on the West Wing, on the West Wing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
was, we'll figure it out because.
yeah.
And another thing we learned, I don't know if I was doing this when you were there, but I would in I if I had a guest actor, uh, and guest acting is very difficult because
It's got to be.
you're coming
Yeah,
into a home of other people, and on a show like West Wing, the notion of doing its signature shot, the walk and talk, was really intimidating, and it would be very, very helpful to. I learned if I'm doing a walk and talk with someone who's just in for the day, for me to fuck it up after to intentionally fuck it up like just 10 feet in. So
just to take the pressure off of them.
the operator doesn't start fucking belly aching. But if I like if the regular fucks up, it would like really, you know, kind of relax them. But it was very striking to me that truly left to our own devices, we're going to figure it out, and you
Yeah,
really start to burn time when, I think it's true for you guys. Bad actors overact, bad writers overwrite, bad directors overdirect. If you tell me as an actor, turn the light on, I'll know what to do. If you say, lift your wrist, extend your arm when it's at a 40, like I'm a fucking llama. Like my legs aren't even walking in opposition anymore. And I'm sure it's true for you guys. And the best work, I think, happens with directors who are secure enough to know, it's like parenting. You don't want to be over. You owe your kids and the crew and the actors the possibility of surprising you. And the most pretentious, big name directors I've ever worked with, all of them were secure enough to want that. The really insecure ones want the actors to think that they, the director, know better how to play the part, and they want you, the Steadicam guy, to think that they know more than you how the
yeah.
shot should be done, and that's a really insecure way to function. There's two atmospheres. There's like, I can't wait to see what you're gonna do, which is where you want to live, and
Yeah.
there's often in anything filmed, I guess just because of the money at stake, you better not fuck this up. And you're not going to get any.
That would not be the better way to go, is what you're saying. The second
That,
one.
yeah, that would not. It works in a marriage, but it does not work.
For one of you.
Did I ever tell you? Hold it. Did I ever tell you the best direction I ever got?
No, but I'm sure it's fantastic. Or maybe you didn't. Would tell me.
It's a cinematographer, former cameraman, Janusz. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So I had worked with Janusz on The Post, with what's his name? Spielberg. And
yeah, Spielberg and Buzz Moyer and Mitch Dubin were the operators on that.
And Janusz is, this notorious, he's really kind of, impish, and he's always like curled up on the set chair at the monitor. And Spielberg would get passionate or frustrated about something, and Janusz was really like hilariously irreverent. He's like, "Oh, geez, the genius is mad. I can trouble." Like, it was really fucking funny guy, and it was fascinating watching the way Spielberg worked, because Spielberg intentionally does not. He really feels like he does his best work when he's improvising the blocking and the camera work. One would think that someone like Spielberg would, have a very controlling thing, but he really wants to sort of dance with Janusz. So anyway, I work with Janusz. Then about a year later, I get a call. Can I do? It was a movie called Call of the Wild, and they're going to pay me. And can I be there on Monday? Meaning somebody has dropped out, but I'm not proud. So I this is going to be worth it. So I'm playing a part.
Okay.
I'm playing a bookend.
Was it Call of the Wild like one of those? It was like mildly animated.
It's called
like Tintin almost.
It's called live action. Now, you and I have been in show business for a combination of like 3/4 of a century. I don't know what the fuck that means. Do you? Live action? Is that what I'm doing now? Or
I did.
all I know is sometimes I was working with a real dog, and sometimes I was working with a diminutive stuntman in a green onesie with little tiny Tim
dots all over.
Tiny Tim crutches, and he had to wear a collar, which
wow.
with little tags on it. So I'm playing this bookend part, okay? And at the beginning, you see me. I'm the patriarch of this farm family in California. I'm in love with this dog. 10 minutes in, the dog gets stolen. The movie goes up to Alaska and starts, with Harrison Ford. And then I'm reading the script, and at the end of it, there's this weird coda where this guy from the Great North, Native American older man, comes back and basically tells me the story of the movie the audience has just watched. Okay.
Okay.
So I go to the director and I go, I don't think you're going to need that scene. I mean, I just want you to know, if there's anything I don't need, it's screen time. And it seems like this is going to be like redundant. And he's like, no, we have to shoot it. So in the script, it says this guy comes back and tells me this story of this great dog, of mythical beast of the Great North.
Yeah.
Of the Klondike. And I am listening. I'm in old age makeup. I just want you to know how humiliating acting is. I'm in old age makeup.
It's tough.
And as he tells the story, the penny drops. I realize, the dog of my life didn't die. It became this mythical creature in the Great North. And it says in the script, he walks toward the window. As the sun sets, his face fills the screen. He weeps. The movie ends. Okay. So I got to cry. Right.
Okay.
And right before we're setting up the shot, it's this long, walk over to a mark by a window, and I swear to God, this is going to be worth it. I know you're
I'm
bored.
sure.
No,
I
I know
know.
you're
I think
bored.
this is fascinating. Go ahead.
Okay,
Other people
so
may be bored. I'm interested.
yeah, I don't care if
Everybody
the
stay tuned.
approval of others means nothing to me.
Yeah,
That's why
that's
I
why you
went
get
to show
after.
business. Yeah. So right before we're gonna set it up, Janusz is walking by me and he goes, "Your face is going to be 50 fucking feet tall in the theater." And I'm like, that's not helpful. So I go out and I'm listening to this deathly sad soundtrack. I'm just like, kind of getting ready with, listening to the stuff. I am obsessed with dogs. We know what we want. We want to
Yeah.
pool and we want the single release, right?
Yeah.
We want to hit the mark, and then the camera's coming in on a track outside the fake window, and then we want it to
Single tier. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
single tier. So they call me in, and I sit down on this chair in this Victorian set, and it's a real antique. And I have a parody of an acting class experience. I sit down, and I'm immediately reminded of my grandmother's house, in a really horribly sad thing I saw at the very end of her life, and I'm like having this, and then I'm thinking, the key is really fighting it. People don't want to cry. So I'm in my head, I'm going, oh fuck, but I'm all of a sudden they tap me and they go, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And we start the scene, and I'm really sad, and the guy I'm doing the scene with is, I know, wondering why I'm sad because he hasn't really brought up the dog yet. I have been doing this long enough to know that this shot only works from the other side of the room, and I'm like, I just fight it, fight it, fight it, fight it, doesn't matter. As I stand up, I get another whiff of this thing, and I have another horrible sadness come to me. And I'm doing this death march, like over to my mark where there's a bag, and the tears are already out of the duct. And now I'm just scared I'm gonna like blow a snot bubble. And my my this is how humiliating it is. And my and but I'm thinking, fight it, man, fight it, like it's too much, it's too much, but just fight it. And my feet feel the bag, and the camera comes in on the track. What was his name? The operator was George, was his name, who I'd worked with. Really nice guy. And the camera comes in after I hit the mark. Tears, no snot. I was aware that there was no snot. But then they go, director goes, cut, and snot comes out, and George looks up from the thing and is like, "Wow, man!" And the crew is like
Yeah.
applauding because actor boy wept.
Brought it.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally did it. And they're giving me tissues, like they're roses, and everybody's, oh my God. And I'm thinking, the vain me is like, oh my God, I guess I like really nailed that place. I'm so deep and emotional. And I hear Janusz go, "I need another." And the crew like literally groans, like they go, "Oh." And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, yeah, there's a problem with your mark. And I'm like, it's a bag. I thought I, he goes, no. There's a problem with your mark. He turns me away from the crew, and he goes, "There is no problem with your mark. This is a kid's movie starring a fake dog. This is not the showers in Auschwitz.
Oh,
I know. I shot the showers in Auschwitz. Take it down a notch, my friend." It's the best direction I ever got.
That's fantastic. That was worth it. That was good. That was great.
It was worth
That was
it. It
great.
paid off.
Wow.
It
That's
paid off.
that's fantastic. Well, let me.
And you would never get that from a director. A director would be like, should we? I don't know.
Maybe we should pull it back a little.
Maybe we should.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
try a different direction.
Yeah. Suddenly you're in like acting Montessori school, and you just feel humiliated. And Janusz just went right
Yep. Wow. Wow. But you
that.
got the message. You got the message across, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
we got another take, and the scene,
Yeah.
as I predicted, was cut.
Was cut. Yeah, of course it was. As you were saying it, I was thinking to myself, boy, it seems like a problem with the script or the movie that they have to have a scene at the end written that explains the movie that you just watched. But that's another
Yes.
story. That
Yeah,
seems
that is
like a
another
problem.
story.
Now, only because you mentioned it, I'm going to bring this up with: was this how you came up with the idea for the emotional stuntman, or had you been an emotional
No,
stuntman
listen,
before this?
I'll tell you where this came from. It's on
Actually, before you do, let me explain. Let me explain. Can I explain quickly what it is? Because it's one of my favorite things in the world. And
directed
then
by my wife.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
And it's on YouTube. I'm going to link to it. The
Funny
Emotional
or
Stuntman.
Die.
It is Funny or Die, and it is honestly, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. It is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I've probably seen it 50 times. Before I knew I was going to talk to you today, I watched it again last night, and I laughed out loud because it
Maybe my
basically
favorite thing I ever did.
it basically is the idea that actors can't hit the emotional high notes. So as soon as they're about to hit something, they go, "Okay, hang on, let's have you step out," to Josh Molina, who's so great. And
So
the
good.
look on his face is like, "Wait, no, but I can act." And it's like, "Yeah,
No, he
that's great.
can't.
Just
He
get out of here."
can't. He can't.
And Brad will come in, and then Brad comes in and redoes the end of the scene and cries, but he's wearing this green suit with dots on his face, and I don't understand how anybody could act across from you in this piece without just laughing hysterically. It is so funny.
It was
And
such a
actually, I will tell you because I know this is a Bradism. There are two parts in it that are my favorite parts. The part where, of course, you have the obligatory "they are not takes, they are gifts," which is great. But actually, to me, the best part of the whole thing is at the end when you walk away from the. Nobody knows what we're talking about, but I don't care because it's my podcast. When you're walking away towards the camera and you want some steamed asparagus, and it's just so randomly out of left field. Everybody listening should stop right now, come back, but go watch it and then come back
yes.
and listen to this. So I
And
want to hear about this because
please watch the extended actor's cut.
so that's the thing is I just found out about that, but maybe I'd seen it's like a 10 minutes, but I can't even understand how you could cut a lesser version. It's so great.
Funny or Die put this thing out. You know what that was? Amy and I went to Funny or Die wanted to talk to us about these different things, and they said emotional stuntman, and I was like, oh my, I forget the person's name, but it was someone in the writers' room at Funny or Die, and I burst out laughing because I would make that joke on sets about how I need to be careful in the scene. I might sprain my soul, you know. Uh, uh, but it's a really funny idea. Oh yeah, and
And you're credited with writing it, right? You're one of the writers on
well,
it,
we
yes?
just improv it. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Oh, is that right? Is that right? It's improv because it is. It is. I mean, it is so unbelievably funny. And like I said, and nothing against what you do in it because it's hysterical. But without Josh Molina, it wouldn't be what it
oh,
is because he's so perfect at being the
humiliated,
moderately wounded,
moderately
humiliated.
talented.
Exactly. Especially, by the way, there's a point where everybody is congratulating you for doing this scene, and in the background, you see him slowly walking off set up the stairs. It's so unbelievably funny. For anybody who wants to know who the real Brad Whitford is, watch that.
Yes.
And there's like, by the way, there's the thing where you're talking about having to be apart from the crew because you don't want to get attached and you're sitting in the back of your Prius like smoking a cigarette and they call
Yeah.
you in and you spray yourself. It's hysterical.
Yeah, and the actresses are always falling in love with me because I'm so emotionally deep. It's a very
It's
funny idea. And
it
again,
is
directed by my wife, who we just made a movie together,
no way.
an extremely low budget rom-com that she directed, wrote, and starred in, and I'm incredibly proud of her.
Why aren't I being called for these things? I don't understand. I'm
I
confused.
don't.
Here he goes with all the excuses,
Yeah,
actors.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
no,
you do enough. You do enough for free.
That's true. Mostly what I do now. But do me a favor and tell her that it is brilliantly directed as well.
Oh,
It's brilliantly acted. I mean, it is because that the thing that I love about that, and again, nobody knows what we're talking. Hopefully, people do because they've seen it. But it is so. It is so on the top of the peak of falling over the other side of being too much and not working, and
yes,
it rides that line both in the performance and the direction and the way it's cut,
yeah, it
and
goes
again,
right. It goes.
like every piece of it is right on top of that line, including I don't know her name, the woman who was also in The Office, who plays the wife. I guess
Oh,
I
she's
think she's the
perfect. Oh my God. Yeah.
again,
No, everybody is.
everybody's on point. It's incredible.
Everybody is dead on. It's funny because in thinking about like Handmaid's Tale is almost over. You're supposed to like start developing stuff, which, by the way, has never worked. Like as an actor, like you don't get a good TV show if you make it a, about an actor's involvement. You need to have Sorkin come up with a show or
Yeah, some
Margaret Atwood.
passion or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, let's make it for Brad is a prescription for disaster. But if you were going to try to do that I've done after Handmaids, it drives my wife nuts. Part of the reason she wanted to do that, and part of the reason I wanted to do it, is like I do all this like really serious stuff, and I would much rather be doing comedy.
Totally. Well, it's funny because I was looking through your list of stuff, and it's like it is all serious stuff, and yet you're one of the funniest people I've ever met. I mean,
No,
and
I
I
like at the
I-
memorial service, like I've tracked, the end of democracy. Like it's not a fun story.
no, no, no. But I will share this because you probably remember. Do you remember you have the you have the record for saying the funniest thing an actor has ever said to me?
Yeah, I
Do you
know what
remember?
it
Do you
is.
remember what that was? Do you remember what that was?
Strap on the tools of ignorance and follow me to glory.
Well, you got it very close. You said, "Strap on your tools of ignorance, camera boy, and follow me to glory." And for some reason, as I remember it, we were sitting outside of Leo McGarry's office, and we were going in there for some scene, and with John Spencer and the great John Spencer.
Oh,
And I think you had, as I remember it, you had a scarf on, and you did that thing where you throw it back over your shoulder, and I think it kind of hit me in the head, and I was like, well, "What is that?" But anyway, I that was it just yeah. It's every time we've worked together, it's just
well,
unlike.
by the way, listen, if I could be serious about
Oh God, yeah,
my pathetic need to be funny, like I really do think that the best work in my experience, no matter what the material is, happens when you're taking the work seriously, but you're not taking yourself seriously doing the work. And if
yeah.
it feels like school, it's not going to be great. It's going to be tight. If it needs to feel like a recess. And I really think that, sets are very pressured places. There's a lot
Yeah.
of money at stake. None of us have real jobs. So we're, like
It doesn't
going on
translate to anything else.
going on a jungle gym from like slippery gig to slippery gig. Uh,
Yeah, no, it's true.
uh, uh,
I think you're right. Actually, as a camera operator, not to cut you off, but I'm going to cut you off because you're an actor.
yeah,
No, but I think it's the same thing as like I take the work that I do unbelievably serious,
yes,
but seriously, but I don't and I mean look, I've done some big things, West Wing and whatever, and there are people like, oh my God. And I'm like, I always feel like it's like that thing in Braveheart. It's like, yeah, and he's 7 feet tall and shoots fire out of his ass. It's like, no, you're
right.
just a person and you're just lucky enough to be able to do that gig that you happen to figure out how to do it well and people like it,
Right.
I mean there's a lot of that, but I always
And
appreciated about that about you.
given enough chances, even a chimpanzee might type a dictionary.
There's that. So let me ask you a question about West Wing specifically, because West Wing was obviously known for the walk and talks and those crazy walk and talks. Do you remember the big thing we did in the Biltmore, 5 votes
Yeah, I
counted, if you
do.
remember?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do.
I
I
mean,
do.
do you remember going into those and are those huge things where you have to remember so many specific things? Are they daunting?
Yeah, yeah, like, they're initially really daunting. It's funny, I always have this. I remember, I mean, it's so kind of sweet and naive, but I remember, feeling guilty because in the pilot, Tommy was directing me. We're doing some walk and talk, and I'm like, picking up files. And I was feeling guilty as an actor that I had no idea what was in the files.
So it was a false beat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got over that shit quick.
Yeah,
No,
right.
walk and talks are very, very scary. Um, and it's just sort of getting the key was sort of getting used to the fear and gradually realizing that look, it's part of what I find really neurotic about being an actor or doing anything creative, which is, I mean, even now after my 80 years in show business, like, until a scene works, I don't know if it will. And it's a very neurotic place to live. And a walk and talk is a condensed version of that. Like, until it works, especially, that where,
Nine characters, three floors, you name it. I
9
mean,
character it's an if any you should link that in.
yeah,
There's other dynamics that happen internally when you're doing something like that. Um, we would talk about with walk and talks, FOG, fear of greatness, which which is when you freeze up at the end of an extraordinarily difficult, perfectly shot walk and talk, and the FOG in that thing, once you've gone down just 2 flights of stairs,
yeah.
was terrifying. But again, uh, you know, the joy of that show was, it was, we were, you had all these actors who were used to doing that very complicated thing, who, Dulé instinctively knows, like, I gotta find the camera, I gotta drift in. Everybody has a sense of humor about, like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I may fuck this up. Everybody knows how difficult it is. As I remember, we rehearsed it a bunch, right?
We rehearsed it without the camera a bunch, but I didn't want to do camera rehearsals because my thinking was always with those big ones, the first take is not going to be, it's not going to be the one because it's just too
Yes.
many moving parts. So I'd rather at least start getting the takes down and getting everybody up to speed because, of course, back then, unlike now, um, you know, people are at 70% when you're rehearsing and they don't go to 90 or 100% until the camera starts rolling. So it's like, let's get into that. But the thing, I kind of wonder whether you guys have this because my thing is, and I've said this when I've discussed that shot with people and other shots, big shots, the first 20 seconds, it's like if I stumble, all right, we'll reset. And then, like, 45 seconds into it, it's like I bump the camera and we'll reset
Right.
and
The
this and
swearing
that and
gets
the other.
louder. Yeah.
Yeah, this round gets louder. But then when you're at like 3 minutes, the grip is leaning into my, dude, Dave, there's blood coming out of your ear. And you're like, shut up. I've only got another 10 seconds of this. And I'm not going to be the one to drop. To drop this.
Right.
Is it that way too, where you're like, I am going to get into that shot no matter what it takes because I'm not going to screw this up?
Yeah. You get into that either successful or unsuccessful, state of determination toward the end of it, which can fuck you up,
Yep.
or it can get you through that. What I love about that shot too is that there's something really motivated about it. Like sometimes I'll see, I would never criticize Martin Scorsese, but sometimes I'll see a shot. I don't want to know. I don't want to go, oh, cool shot. And in that particular, it's such, I don't think people know how impossible a shot that was, but it makes total sense
Yeah.
because we're going down, we're going out, didn't we, by the way, light that hotel on fire? Was that?
I don't know if light the hotel on fire is what I would say on a podcast, but there was some fire and smoldering involved that had nothing to do with you or I, and it was prior to the shot.
Were you there when we triggered the sprinklers in the LA Public Library?
I was not there for that. So
Uh,
there's a history to the show and lighting large buildings on
yeah,
fire,
yeah, yeah.
potentially. But I know what you're talking about, because it's one of the things that I talk about also is there's this point, and with long walk and talks, actually, there was a point when some of them, that one didn't, but some of them got to it, where it's like, I don't think this is about the story anymore. I think this is about the shot, because to me, the thing that I always say is, and I would think you would be the same way as an actor, is like the second someone realizes that I'm shooting something, I'm not doing something right, or the shot's not designed right.
Right.
Because
It's like noticing I'm acting. You
yeah,
know,
exactly, right.
but
So
but I felt like you know Tommy, who's obviously the great thing about Tommy and Aaron, they had no breaks.
that's for sure.
They were pushing, and I always felt like I felt like Tommy was like a real advocate for the camera department, and
Absolutely.
and for the DP, and that show doesn't happen without Tommy. It's C-SPAN, in
Yeah.
finding some visual energy in that. I mean, the farther I get away, the more I appreciated him. That's him. Was he directing that episode?
No, that was Michael Lehman, the guy who did
Oh, right.
Heathers and whatever. But
Right, right.
but he was there for that, which is
Yeah,
why
yeah,
I
yeah.
talk
But
about
I
this as
remember Tommy there that night going,
no. Yeah.
getting us all psyched and like, don't worry, you're gonna fuck it
Yep.
up. But
Yeah, no, and well, the thing with Tommy is that we both worked with, we should say, Tommy Shalami, who's been on
yeah,
the
you can
podcast
laugh
also,
at the name. You can laugh.
good, and a good friend of both of ours, and an incredible director and producer and show creator and whatever. But the thing with him is always, and like we were talking about earlier, he's the type of person who goes, "Here's this thing, you go make it better." And he doesn't
Yes.
micromanage you to make it better, but he will come in and go, "I'm not loving that, but this is great. Let's go in that." Yeah, and I've seen him do that with actors too. And
No,
it's just
I'll tell you a very smart thing about Tommy, and Tommy could. Uh, Tommy is somebody who. It's a very funny story because, like, Tommy initially fought against my casting.
because you did A Few Good Men with Aaron on Broadway, right? Was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you sort of came into the
And
film.
Tommy was a real hurdle in me getting the part, which I never let him forget. And then when Aaron offered me Studio 60, Tommy wanted me to audition, and I was like, "Oh, I'm uh, gonna fucking kill you." But in terms of that said, Tommy's like a dear friend,
Yeah.
and I never would have been able to. I always joked with him, and there was truth to it. I didn't feel like I didn't want him in the room. I felt like I couldn't act in front of him. You ask him about this. I like.
Because it was overwhelming, or
I just felt like he was judgy and not a fan, and I'm like,
really.
"Well, I'm not a fan either, so if neither of us believe in this, what the fuck are we doing?"
Maybe we
But,
should
like,
both leave.
no, I
Yeah.
always had this,
Wow.
like, hierarchical, kind of mind fuck with Tommy, but Tommy was brilliant as showrunner. That show would not have worked, and one of the most brilliant things that Tommy would do, speaking of not being insecure, is he thought, you got a big show, it's taken off. That's when showrunners tighten up. And Tommy always, when a director was brought in, and with the directors who stayed, Tommy was always saying, "Push it, push it, push it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Don't
that's what made.
don't get complacent. In other words, don't go, "This works. Let's just keep doing that."
Listen, Tommy, if you made your day,
Yeah.
Tommy thought you didn't care.
You didn't do. Oh. Having directed under him on Studio 60, I actually know that, and I was like, "Wait, what's happening?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
Don't make your
because
day.
everybody else is telling me something totally different. I'll tell you something that he said to me. There was one scene in Studio 60 I don't remember what it was, but actually you were in that storyline. It was like a little hospital set, and we had like two rooms or like a room and just an exterior or whatever. And I remember I was prepping, and I was saying to him like, "There's just not enough space here. Like, there's not enough. I mean, we have a lot of scenes here, and I got to figure something out. You got any thoughts?" And he's like, "Well, just tell them to build some more set." And I remember going, I'm not you, right? Like I'm a director for hire who's done two other things. I don't think they're going to go, "Sure, Dave, what do you want? What do you want us to build on this episode 19 of a first season?"
Tommy got mad at me because it got back to him. Peter Roth, who was the head of Warner Brothers, was walk, walk walking by, and he said, have you seen Tommy? And I said, "Oh, he's out front, in front of the studio burning cash in a hibachi."
What did Peter Roth say? Or did he
He
expect it
did.
from you?
He didn't laugh. Apparently, he told.
That's pretty funny. I will, just going back to that West Wing shot, I'll share one thing that you probably don't know, and then we should move on to something else.
Yeah.
They brought me down. So we finished. I don't know the dates, but that was episode 3, and I think it was like the third or fourth day. And at the end of episode 2, they said, "Hey, we have this huge shot at the Biltmore. We're not sure if it's possible. We want to, after we wrap, take you down. We'll keep you on the clock and we'll walk through it. You tell if it's doable." And I've come off of ER. I'm on this amazing show, West Wing, it's not on the air yet, but it's still incredible. And I'm 29, and I might have a teeny little ego. I don't know, possibly.
Maybe.
And I walk through it, and I go, "Yeah, this is yeah."
Oh yeah, easy.
And yeah, no, easy peasy. And they go, "Great." And then we get there on the day, and I walk through it, and I was like, "Who the hell said this was doable?" And I remember very specifically that first set of stairs. I was actually supposed to precede you down, and I looked at it, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to proceed. These are too steep. I'm going to kill myself." So I remember going up to Michael and going, "Hey, Michael, what would be really organic and kind of cool and edgy?" And I threw them like every word that you say to a director to try to convince them.
Right.
He's like, "What?" And I was like, "Well, if they went past us and they went down or down, oh, well, that'd be cool." And then he's like, "Hey, we're going to do this." And I'm like, "All right, that one." And it was just hurdle after hurdle after that, because I basically didn't think it through. But I think sometimes when you get in those holes is when you end up doing cool stuff.
Yeah. And that's one of the coolest things about the shot is you're leading, and then
Following
then,
and all that stuff. And
but again, you need I think of like, you need actors who are pliable. You need an Allison Janney who's not going to think her integrity is being undermined if you say, "I need you to turn your face a little bit."
Exactly. Well, actually, so wait, let me segue here. It's not a segue, but notes. Camera operator notes to an actor. What's the good way to give you a note that we need to give you, and a bad way to give it to you?
I think you're fucked giving notes to an asshole.
That's going to be what it is.
First you need to chuck some minnows. I mean, begin every note with praise, right?
That was the best performance I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because no matter how intimidating we may be, we're like, like you got, so chuck some minnows and say, "Oh, it's so great, and I just want to be sure that I get all of it." And I got a little technical issue being able to follow you down. So wrap the turd of a note in a doily of praise.
That's okay. Say that again for me, because that's a bump.
Wrap the turd of a note in a doily of praise.
Yeah, that's going on T-shirts. They'll be available on the App Store very soon. But so basically,
by the way, you know what's really interesting is, like, I came up in the theater, and like the cliche is like, film acting is like really organic. The first time you're on a set, you're like, "I'm standing on tape. This is like this is like out of sequence." It is the most inorganic, thing, and so I'm
Yeah.
always surprised. Like when you do a play, it's very organic. You don't even have to worry about getting to emotional places because you're doing it in a way that usually gets you there. So I always with film actors wondering about what it's like to act on film, I'm like, just be prepared. There's going to be a lot of things. Don't lose yourself in sort of fulfilling the technical obligations
Yeah.
of where you have to be.
Well, that's why I asked, because I always feel terrible about going, you've just given this great, monologue, and I have to come in and go, uh, you know, you were standing a little off your mark there, and we saw slightly off the set. Do you think you can hit that, or do you want me to come over? Like, what's going to work on the next one? And I always hate to do that, but there's a reality to it that
Yeah.
you have to.
No,
You were talking about.
there. Listen, man, it's like with a toddler. Like you have to tell them, don't play with a gun. Like don't run into the street. Like
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
uh, like
yeah,
they may not like it, but it is your obligation, unfortunately,
yeah.
to do it.
Well,
And most people, I think, I mean, all kidding aside, like acting's like it is a humiliating. People always think we're like egomaniacs, and I'm like, well, I think we have like just a really bizarre capacity for humiliation because it usually doesn't work, and you don't
yeah.
you don't know when it's working. And the sensation when you're trying to do something, especially if it's something sort of emotionally invested, and then they go cut, and then someone comes up to you kind of disappointed and is like, you know what, just kind of stand over there. If you're able to phrase it in a way where you're joining them and trying to make this work, I think, I
No,
think
that's actually great. I mean, what I tend to do, which you've taught me something, because I think what I will do from now on, but please don't set this out there. Although the 5 people who listen to this podcast will know, I'm going to come up and be the first thing is, hey, is that a new cologne you're wearing? You smell wonderful, and
man,
then
you
go
look
into the
amazing.
thing, which is nice. I like that.
Yeah,
But usually what I do is I sort of couch it in. There's just one moment where I'm having a problem getting the
yeah,
correct frame, and I'm wondering if you can help. And then usually, if I notice that they're off something, I'll go, hey, if we pull the table over here, would that help you, or whatever? And I try to offer solutions, but sometimes you can't. But the big problem for me is not problem, but the tough part for me is like when I'm working with someone who's method, who's not you, who doesn't have the crying scene and then turn around and crack a joke. I
right.
don't want to interfere with that process, right? Like I don't want to mess with that. So there's always that weird thing of, and sometimes there have been times, especially with emotional stuff, where I'll just go up to the director and the DP and go, look, I'm not gonna try and correct this because it's just not gonna happen, and I don't want to get involved in that. So I'm just gonna come over to the left and frame it different, or something like that. But I think that's a big part of being an operator is there is and I wonder whether you notice this, like with a lot of operators, myself included, there's a weird protection that goes on of the actors, because
Yeah,
like I'm sort of in your space, and so I try to make sure. I mean, this is such a 2024 way of putting it, but I try to make sure that it's like a safe space where people feel like they're actually protected on some level. And I wonder
yeah.
whether it's noticed or not.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely noticed. And when it's what basically what I want, like from a director or from a camera operator, from I just want the straight news.
Yeah, that's gonna make it better.
Yeah, yeah. I just want an honest interaction. I know just because I think acting is a neurotic thing to do, and I hate on sets there's a hierarchy on we're all a bunch of pinko lefty humanists, and then you get on a set and it's like a 15th century serfdom. There's like the untouchables and
Yeah,
like if I can stop in the middle of a take and go cut, and go to the prop guy and go, where's my fucking watch?
yeah,
That's fine. If he goes, it's where I put it in your fucking trailer, yeah, like Like he's, you know, you know, he's gone. And I've worked with people who are great, who are, I think, when I direct, I find it difficult, to navigate actors. And I think with some actors, they're going to, uh, out of, everybody deals with fear in a different way. I deal with it by becoming, an hysterical, Labrador puppy who needs everyone to laugh. That's how I deal with it.
You
Other
do it very
people,
well, by the way.
other people, even I'm exhausted with it. Other people deal with it by becoming the arbiters of integrity. There are people who I love, who have been some of the best people I ever work with, who, as actors, you will never be able to direct. They need to resist in order to own it. And I judged that and took it really personally on everybody's behalf for a lot of my career, but I've become just more understanding that everybody is profoundly insecure. Acting's a bizarre thing. I mean, for the method people, who are upset about getting a note, I always just want to ask them how do they explain the presence of the crew?
Well, you don't know what their home life is like, in all fairness. I mean, maybe they bring that home. They have a whole nother
Yeah, yeah,
crew that
yeah,
sits there and watches them sleep.
yeah. So the guy,
So
the, the guy holding the stick isn't distracting you from the
yeah,
period you're in.
I did a show.
Oh, go ahead.
I know I did a TV show. I'm not going to say much more than this because I don't want to give too much away. But with established actors, and there was an fairly established um, day player in, and we were in an interrogation room, and the boom guy is sitting over, two people against one person, and the boom guy's
Right.
moving it back and forth. And after the first take, during the first take, she goes, "I'm sorry, I got to cut. Is he going to do that the whole time?" And pointed up
Yeah.
at the boom, and we're all sort of like, "Oh, really?" She goes, "Well, I can't concentrate with that moving around." And he's like, "Well, I don't know how I can get someone else." We had to go wire everybody. And I was thinking to myself, really? Like that seems like that's part of the gig to understand that, but I don't know. But you were going to
Yeah.
say, yeah,
No, one thing that is interesting that is, when we started West Wing, we were shooting on film, right?
yeah,
Now basically everything's digital, right? Unless
yeah,
you're Scorsese, I guess.
or
I think
Tarantino. Yeah.
it's really interesting to me how that has changed things in some ways, just in the acting world, in some ways for the better, in some ways for worse. The good news is I think it's led to a level of sort of unselfconscious uh, truthfulness in a way that is that is positive, because there isn't as much of a jolt when that camera is, when the camera's on.
Huh.
The bad side of it is I think it wastes so much time. I mean, I've worked with Clint Eastwood, and like, your first take, your grandchildren are going to see. So you show up, you're ready, and there's a lot of times. I mean, I really sort of miss that slight sense of urgency
I
that you
can't
had,
agree more. Yeah. Yeah.
because I felt like there's a baseball analogy, like knuckleball pitchers. I know you're not athletic at all,
No, no,
but
no.
in baseball, if a knuckleball pitcher comes in, they throw a lot of balls, and the fielding deteriorates because you assume that the ball is not going to be hit to you. And I think that happens with digital stuff. It's like, we don't have to worry about reloading. We can.
Yep.
I've been on sets where they leave the camera on while the writers come down and like rewrite something.
Well, I'll tell you my version of it, that when we went from film to digital, was, and I didn't notice this. I didn't understand this until I finally like thought about it. Was my operating got much worse, and I was thinking, well, I'm not ready. I know it's going to happen at some point, which it has happened now, but I'm not ready for this now. What's going on? And what I realized was that subconsciously, when I was doing a rehearsal, and even now when I'm doing a rehearsal, you're doing like 60%. Like you're sort of,
Yeah.
you're finding it and whatever. And I didn't realize that, especially Steadicam, but even when I was on, conventional cameras, because your head's right up against the mag, it was the whirring and the vibration that internally told me, oh, this is something like this is important now. You actually got to
Right.
bring it now. And
Right.
and so I had to mentally uh, uh, convince myself that this was actually we're doing something. And it was really strange. And actually, when I go back now and occasionally do film, on a rare occasion that I do, the second the camera turns on, it's this unbelievable sort of like you said, jolt
Yeah.
of, oh, something's happening, as opposed to digital, which is like, yeah, nothing's happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nothing's happening, and it basically turns performance into an extended kind of improv rehearsal.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's just keep trying stuff and we'll see what works and
Yeah,
whatever. But it's
yeah, yeah.
interesting that that you feel the same way. Chris Harhoff, who's a great operator, said something to me that I had never in 35 years thought about, but you guys deal with it all the time, which is, we're sitting on the camera and we're looking at Brad Whitford and the sunset and the sailboats going by and, the eagles coming through and all this beautiful stuff. And
The
they're turned
hairline
around
receding.
as we're rolling, actually.
Yes, it's not going to match.
Got to get it in one. And they're turned around and they're looking at me in my t-shirt, and I haven't shaved in 4 days, and there's two lights in their eyes, and the dolly grip's looking through his phone, and the boom guy is checking
Oh
something
yeah,
else out. And yet we just have to watch it, and they actually have to like bring this whole performance, and it kind of blew my mind. Like I never thought about that before.
I
Yeah.
had a very funny moment during Studio 60. I was doing a scene with Matt, dear Matt,
Uh,
and I was doing this take with him, and how should I put this? Aaron and Tommy were kind of, it was a classic um, Studio 60 scene of, Matt and I supporting each other. And it was a time when Tommy and Aaron, I think, were having a hard time. And Tommy was sitting there, and Aaron sort of stepped into the room in the middle of the take. And Yervant Gahopian, who was one of the funniest boom operators who could imitate absolutely anyone. And I could see, like, I'm doing the scene with Matt, and I'm just seeing all of these weird dynamics happen
behind the camera.
behind the
Yeah.
camera. And I burst out laughing at the thought, the camera's pointed the wrong way. like, like
There's
that
much
is,
more interesting things going on
oh
back there.
my
That's
God.
hysterical.
Yeah,
That's hysterical.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I will say that not many people saw Studio 60, but working with you and Matthew and actually that whole cast was a real treat
Oh, it was an
everything
amazing,
together for the
amazing,
making.
amazing, amazing
It
group.
never found its audience, but so I didn't ask you at the beginning. Can you very briefly tell me about your how'd you get into all this stupidity?
Jesus. I think the first thing was like an anti-smoking skit I did with my dog in 6th grade, which is only interesting because as I remember it, I actually smoked a cigarette. That's how
Do
old
you
I
have
am.
this somewhere that I can
No,
post it?
no,
Ah,
no,
damn it!
no.
What? All right.
Then it was a weird thing because I grew up in Wisconsin, and I started doing plays in 7th and 8th grade. We were actually in Pennsylvania then, but then high school was in Wisconsin. And you didn't know anybody who was an actor in
Yeah.
Wisconsin. It was not a remote possibility. To say you wanted to be an actor would just be vain and unrealistic. I went to college. I was first a philosophy major, then an English major. I was never even in college going, because it was just embarrassing to say I wanted to be an actor. And then I applied and I got in. I remember opening this thing from Juilliard, saying I got in. I remember saying out loud, "Well, shit, I guess I'm gonna try to do this." It was it was not, and I'm kind of grateful for it because I really think kids specialize too early now and sort of pre-professionalize what remained even all the way through college. I went to Wesleyan University, which is now famous for my friend and reliable name drop, Lin-Manuel Miranda. And Lin and I have talked about how when he was there obviously after me, but it was kind of a dysfunctional theater department and everything was self-generated. And there was just this sort of, it was like we were in this sort of minor league Steppenwolf. We were just throwing stuff up, and it was very free.
Yeah.
Juilliard was kind of a British acting Nazi, sort of hellscape of that's
It's
what.
on the brochure, actually.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
small
yeah, yeah.
print, but it's on the
Yes,
brochure.
yes.
Yeah.
Let's suck the joy out of it and get it done. No, but even there, what was great about it was just acting a lot. You were constantly getting up there and doing it. The aspiration was always I just wanted to be in plays as much as possible. One thing about The West Wing that always goes unnoted is the reason that incredible cast was so good is everybody was a theater actor. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody said, how do you get Allison Janney? You get somebody with her gifts, and then you don't let them become famous, and you make them do 8 shows a week for a decade, and that
Wow.
and then you'll get it. So I was just doing theater, regional, off Broadway, and then gotten a couple of little parts in big movies like Presumed Innocent and Scent of a Woman, and then was doing theater the whole time. So it really sort of happened. I guess I'm still embarrassed about it.
That shocks me. That absolutely shocks me.
No. I feel like it's such a, I worry with the business is so different now. I mean,
Yeah.
I was coming up in a time when regional theaters were exploding, off Broadway was exploding. I worry about kids who, graduated from Juilliard during the pandemic and have yet, have to film themselves. The self-taping thing is
Auditions. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a nightmare for actors. And I'm really grateful that I got for obvious reasons like West Wing, creative experience, the cultural experience, but also just the like that schedule of total immersion where you really there's something that happens on a show like that because the entire time you're doing a movie, including Get Out, I don't know. I don't know. Is this going to work? I hope it does. I want it to, but you're not like high-fiving yourself,
Because there are too many pieces that you're not aware of because it's too big, or
I just
because
can't.
you're too inside of it, or
I can't tell.
yeah.
I know the script is fascinating, but you don't know what happens on these shows. These sort of high aspiration shows is, you know, on some level it's working. Like not everybody. Like we have our audience, and getting over knowing you have your audience and you get to just have this long relationship with them and this long fascinating relationship with a character. I feel really lucky, I had that because I don't think people are going to get that anymore,
No,
just the
because
way.
shows are 10 episodes or whatever, and then they're one and done, right? They just don't have that
I'm going back to
longevity.
Handmaid's Tale, and part
Yeah.
of it was the strike, but speaking of hairlines not matching, it was 2 years ago, you know
What, two
that.
years ago that you last did Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah, and
Because
we're going back.
wow.
And it's interesting because on a show like that, which I feel lucky about because I think it's very hard for shows to have kind of cultural impact.
Hmm.
Um, when we first got delayed by the pandemic, we thought, "Oh God, we're going to lose our audience because it's been so long." And then I think they've realized that it almost in this atmosphere, it almost works like you're relaunch. It's like relaunching The West Wing. you know, people get excited. It's almost like every season's a reboot.
Yeah. Do you sometimes pick up a script for Handmaid's Tale and think that you're reading the newspaper and then realize that it's the script?
Oh, it's so fucking scary.
Oh
Oh my
Jesus!
God.
Anyway, we're not going there. I will tell you this: there are people that I meet who talk to me about specifically the West Wing. Oh, you got to do these great shots and this and that and the other. And the West Wing was an amazing time for me. But I will tell you what was. I mean, and it was fun doing all those shots. And like you said, I mean, from an actor point of view, you just got to hone and hone and hone. And from a camera point of view, I got to do the same thing.
Right.
But the best part about it for me, and this is complete truth, was being able to watch actors like yourself and Allison and Dulé, and I'm going to leave people out here, Richard Schiff and John Spencer. Oh my God, John Spencer. Um, and um, and watch take after take the subtle changes that happened and almost the underacting that everybody was doing against each other.
Yeah.
It was one of the most incredible learning experiences in my career. And again, and I don't mean to single anybody out, but I will. But John Spencer specifically, John would come in with his what he had those tea tree
Toothpicks. Yeah.
toothpicks, and he would offer me one. He always had that like crooked smile on his face, and he would just walk. I mean, all he'd do is open up the door and say hello to someone, and somehow he would just knock it out of the park. I mean, the guy was everybody was incredible.
No, acting like saved his leg. Yeah, John would come in. You know, I always said he had like a face like a baseball mitt, but he'd come in like sucking on a toothpick, and
Toothpick.
he'd go, "Did you see Elaine Stritch in that TV movie she did on Sunday night on Lifetime? Beautiful, beautiful work.
It's so him.
Beautiful."
He was the best.
He was the best.
So great.
And I just want to say, I mean, you're very sweet to say
Oh
that.
wait, I want to wait. I'm going to interrupt. No, I'm going to interrupt one second.
I
I
need
don't know if I said it. I don't know if I said Allison's name in there. I can't recall if I did. And to your point, I remember Allison coming in, and after the first one or two episodes, me going, "Who the hell is this woman?" And like, why haven't I seen her?
No,
She's so frigging talented and so funny. And
she's
just
she's a freak, and I'll get back to her. But what is
Yeah.
most moving to me about what you said, and even though you went back to get Allison, is that you left Melina out of all of those.
I didn't know. I didn't work with Josh Malina. He was after my time.
No, I remember. Allison is one of those. There's like, I remember like watching her.
Oh my God, and Martin. I didn't mention Martin.
Yeah. Martin. I mean, Allison. I remember just like sitting there one day, and 5 months in, no sleep, and just sitting there. What was interesting about her, she would not that into politics, not a big over preparer, and she could not have a false moment. Like like not
Incredible.
not in rehearsal, not in anything, and it's a very obvious thing. But I just had this little sort of exhausted epiphany. I was like, oh, she's just trying not to act like.
Yeah, but there's something truth to that, right? Because all the moments are real. I mean, that's everything about her. She's incredible.
Yeah.
Now you guys actually got to go to the West Wing, the White House during that time, right? Several times before
Yes.
Mr. Clinton lost it. And
yeah, we went there. We went there when we actually went there when Bush.
Did you?
Yeah.
And what was that?
And I was just back there. Do you remember Gene Sperling? Who Gene was Clinton's economic advisor, Obama's.
Oh, I know the name. Okay, yeah.
He still works there. It is bizarre that all of these years later, I mean, DC is for any of us to go to is weird, just because anybody who works there, probably watched
Watch the West
watch.
Wing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, we would go, and we actually,
I mean, was it weird being in the actual Oval Office when you're hanging out and ate all the
yeah, I
Chinese stuff?
remember I was, I'm blanking her name, but Clinton's secretary. Like, I'm so used to like being on a set,
Yeah.
and it was exactly like that. And I think I like kind of put my foot on the table a little bit, and she's like, Whoa, 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 whoa."
Actors. That's great.
But yeah, no, that room, obviously the interesting thing in the White House is that, in the, there's no open space at all.
It's teeny. I mean, right?
Oh, it's
Everything's
teeny.
cramped,
It's
especially.
teeny.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be in the West Wing. There's one guy's office was FDR's like dog kennel. Like there's no room. And the
Yeah.
OEOB across the street, there's a lot of room. And all kidding aside, like about the show, like I mean, I used to get in trouble sort of defending it. Like obviously it was clearly aspirational, but everybody would talk about what a fantasy it was. And I'm somebody who actually thinks The Sopranos is the greatest television show ever made. But we would get shit for like for being sort of sentimental and aspirational.
Yeah.
And
God forbid.
I would always say, 5 people around the president who believes in him is not a fantasy. A mobster in therapy is a little bit of a fantasy.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I am look, I think part of the reason we're in a very dangerous place politically, and this is a little convoluted for me to say,
Yeah.
is that I'm glad that it was a show that was non-cynical about the importance of politics and public service, because politics is the way you create your moral vision. And part of the reason I think we're in trouble now is that we tend to think it's culture, and culture is really important.
Yeah.
But it,
Yeah.
I always say,
Well,
West Wing won't help you if you have a pre-existing condition. Handmaid's Tale won't help you if you're a rape victim, but they
yeah.
did really well.
Yeah.
Um,
No, look, one of my favorite moments in it is, I think, well, it might be a flashback, but it's the moment where your character uh, falls in love with the president when he's stumping in New Hampshire, and the dairy farmer gets up and says something
right.
about, what about this thing? And he just looks at him and he goes, yeah, we kind of screwed you on that one, and I'm really sorry
Right,
about
right,
it, but
right.
it was because of X, Y, and Z. And I always thought that's fantastic.
By
I
the
want to
way,
ask you.
just quickly, those
Yeah.
episodes that were the beginning of the second year,
Is that what? Okay. Yeah.
the Shadow of Two Gunmen, Tommy directed the fuck
Oh,
out of that. I
it's
mean,
amazing, amazing storytelling on every level.
amazing. And what was interesting is I think Aaron was, I may be wrong, but I think he was pushed into doing a cliffhanger, which felt cheesy to him. But I think it led to, I mean, those episodes.
A cliffhanger on season 1 into
Yeah,
season 2, you mean? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, gotcha. Yeah, and you think it set it up, you're saying? Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a great story. For anybody who hasn't watched The West Wing, God, go watch The West Wing. It's incredible all the way through. As far as someone who speaks out politically, and you get involved in a lot of things, I just went to Pasadena the other night and saw this thing on the Christian nationalism that you moderated, which was great. Do you ever get you're an actor? What the hell? What the hell? Do you
Oh,
have the
yeah,
right to
yeah,
speak out? And
yeah.
I mean, it's weird because on the one hand, I, I sort of get what people are saying, but on the other hand, it's like everybody has a voice, and you're just using yours. So what do you say to
No,
that?
it's something I look. I grew up Quaker, where the whole point of it is, fighting for justice. It's not about faith as anesthesia or anything. It's about putting values into action. I grew up in a political family. A family that was interested in politics. My brother was a conscientious objector during the war, so it was always something I cared about. And then, I totally understand people wincing when Ben Affleck or I talk about, the trade surplus with China. But, we're conducting public discourse, in the age of entertainment, which is really sad. And usually the people telling you to shut up are self-appointed celebrities.
That's an interesting point.
And
Yeah.
and I always defend Hollywood activism because for the most part, they're not the ones you should worry about, putting pressure on the political system, because in general, we're not advocating for anything that would benefit us. What we really need, it's a way to deflect from the real corrupting pressure on politics that comes from dark money and industries that don't care about the public good. And ultimately, there's nothing less democratic than telling someone to shut up, so they should shut up.
There's that. Well, look, we were talking about it before this, but that panel that you had the other night, you were even saying that you didn't want to speak that much because there were so many great people on the panel, and they sort of mentioned, look, it's great to have a celebrity here because people come out and listen, and we want people to listen, and if that's what it takes. But you have so much to say, but you recognize, like, no, let these people who are experts on this,
Well, it's a
not
like it.
celebrity, speak.
It's look, I definitely, kind of struggle with it. I always find it funny that, at this moment, this many years into the Trump nightmare, the monster in the horror movie that won't die, this is a spray tan celebrity, low information celebrity that like a cult has like formed around. I
Oh
always think
God.
can you imagine, like I've helped, I've campaigned next to people who are running for president or running for local office, and they're always understandably terrified that they might say something that could be construed as condescending. And then this, I mean, it would be as if I was doing an interview with Variety, and I said, okay, are you recording? Good. This is what your readers need to know. I'm phenomenally rich. I mean, unbelievably rich. No, listen. And the reason is I am the most talented actor who ever lived. You mentioned my work in Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, or maybe you didn't,
Sure.
but I am a genius, and I'm the best actor who ever lived. Everything I do is brilliant. And by the way, little Chrissy Bale sucks. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's sort of like you came up with "Birds Aren't Real" before "Birds Aren't Real" was something,
I love Birds
which
Aren't Real.
which is one of the most genius things ever.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So, well, thank you. Just so I can say it, thank you for all the activism that you do, because it shines a light, and that's what we need right now. I think I'm probably going to wrap this up because otherwise we'll talk for 9.5 hours.
Wrap it up,
Uh,
baby. I'll
yeah.
be back in a couple of months.
Yeah, well, good luck in Budapest on your show. And first, I want you to say that camera operators are more important than actors on some level, so I can use that as a soundbite. So I'd appreciate that.
Camera operators are more important than actors because without them, we would never meet the actors.
I wasn't where I thought I was going to go, but that's okay. I can cut it. That's fine. No, but this was a true pleasure, and I so appreciate it. And there's so much great information in here, and so many great stories.
Well,
Um,
I love you, and I hope we work
Back at you.
together.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Well, next time your wife directs something, you got to call me. I'm gonna let you take us out, which I let everybody take us out with.
Josh
Someone who's
Brolin
gonna.
is a terrible actor.
That I won't cut. I'm gonna
Josh
send
can't
it.
act.
I'm gonna send it.
He's just not good.
And then you know what he's going to do? He's going to post a video of him with a single tear going, "See, I could do it. I could do it. I did it." Everybody listening should watch The West Wing and the Emotional Stuntman. Not in that order.
The
'Cause
director's cut, very important.
director's cut,
I mean, I'm sorry,
yeah,
the actor's cut. The actor's cut.
the actor's
I
cut.
think
Yes,
it's
as it should be.
14 minutes.
It
Very
really
important.
is one of the funniest things you'll ever see. But someone getting into the business, Brad Whitford, 30 years ago. I don't know. What advice do you have on how to succeed?
Okay. I think about this a lot. I think that we compartmentalize ourselves too much. I was talking to a kid who was getting out of Juilliard, and they said, well, if you're good and you work really hard, you can have a career, right? And I was like, ah. um, uh, I wish that were true, but what I really do believe is that if you're really good, and you work really hard, you can have a life in storytelling. And there's many different ways to come into this. And we tend to want to put a label on ourselves as that has something to do with what we were initially interested in, which is acting or something technical. But you generating your own work and opening up the possibilities of other parts of storytelling that might interest you. But boy, generate your own work. Don't put your self-esteem on a platter and hand it to show business.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.